Okay? All right. So, good morning. Stewardship. Some of you have heard the story of Alice in Wonderland, that crazy topsy-turvy book. So there's one point in the story. Alice is at a fork in the road, and she doesn't know which one to take. And she looks up at the tree, and there's this grinning cat. And she asks the cat, "Which way should I go?" And the cat says, "Where do you want to go?" She says, "I don't know." And the cat says, "Well, that doesn't matter then." So we don't want that fate for ourselves, so we're going to go to first define what is stewardship. Now, the title of the message is Stewardship and Relationship, God's Guardrails for Believers. So over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to try and tie these concepts together to give us a sense of hopefully a deeper understanding of what stewardship is all about. But what is stewardship? Very simple, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Pretty easy, pretty simple. But if you want a bit more understanding, there's some extra words for you. Oversight, supervision, keeping, direction, control, etc., etc. So that's what it is. Now, everything I'm going to say today is based on lessons that I have learned in my life, which is a polite way of saying the lessons learned based on mistakes I've made in my life. So I'm going to be passing on those lessons to you. So while I'm standing up here and preaching, in a sense, I'm right down there with you guys in the pews, because everything I say here today applies to me as well. So one of the basic aspects of stewardship is you are accountable to the one who gave you whatever it is to be a steward of. Now, the next point I'll make here is, in this sermon, I will use the word you a lot. It applies to me too, okay? Now, this word stewardship is something we've been hearing a lot of for the last 20, 30, 40 years, but it's actually a very, 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 very old idea. So old, in fact, you have to go all the way back to Genesis chapter 1. And what does Genesis chapter 1 say? Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." Familiar passage. But did you get these two words? So that. Think about this. The sole explanation given in Genesis chapter 1 for all of creation, all of the magnificence and the complexity, the why are those two words. So that. So that what? So that we will have dominion over creation. So in one sense, the act of creation brought the concept of stewardship to life for the first time. It's as old as that. God designed it, nobody else, and He designed it in a way that He would embed it in creation so that creation itself could be subject to stewardship. Now, that should tell you something. You've got to take this concept seriously because it's so old and so fundamental to life itself. Now, I don't know about you guys, but the only time I rule over fish or fowl now is if it's cooked and served up on a plate in front of me. So Eden is long gone, but the idea still remains in a modern context. So, how does it show up today? Well, here are the 6 key categories: faith, family, friendships, health, work, and finances. Now, if you look at friendships a little bit more broadly, it can apply to all kinds of relationships. But if you get these 6 categories right, most of the challenges we face in life could be managed, at least as far as they are under our control. But I'm not going to speak of all 6. I'm going to speak of 1, finances. Now, this is where you're supposed to get a warm, fuzzy feeling, and let's see how it goes. Now, I'm going to be talking about the word finances, but I'll use the word wealth, I'll use the word money, I'll use the word interchangeably. And I'm not preaching a prosperity gospel. I'm telling you, these are the lessons I've learned myself. It worked in my life, and that's why I'm sharing them with you. So if you use the word money, think of it broadly in the context of wealth and finances. But since we're talking about wealth and money, I thought we should have some audience participation time. Who wants to be a millionaire? Do you guys remember this game show from many years ago, right? The first game show that offered $1 million prize to the winner. And it's still running in many forms, many parts of the world. So, here's the question. Who wants to know how to be a millionaire in 3 easy steps? Guaranteed. I won't ask you to raise your hands and embarrass yourself. If you want to know the answer, just blink. If you don't want to know the answer, don't blink. Every one of you blinked. Every one of you blinked. Now, since clearly you're an audience who likes to know how not to do things, I'm going to give you a different way of stewardship. Start out as a billionaire, spend 999 million as fast as you can, and voila, you are a millionaire. I knew you guys would like that. So I'm going to keep that theme going, okay? If the clicker will go, yeah. So I'm going to talk to you about how not to be a good steward of your finances. I'm going to take a contrarian view. So this is the guide to complete and utter failure of being a good financial steward. Okay? I got it. I promise you, it's going to make sense. Hold on to this. The first thing you've got to believe, or not believe actually, is that wealth has eternal significance. If you don't believe that, you are well on your way to being a bad steward of finances. What do I mean by that? Wealth is not a human invention. Caesar didn't come up with it. Karl Marx didn't come up with it. John Maynard Keynes didn't come up with it. Jeff Bezos didn't come up with it. God came up with the idea of wealth. Now, some of you may be thinking, where did you get that idea from? Where's that in the Bible? Let's go. Revelation chapter 5, 11 to 12. Read this with me. Then I looked and I heard around the throne and the living creatures and the elders the voices of many angels, numbering myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, what? Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. Did you catch that? Why would the Lamb receive wealth? Wealth is for us down here. What's it doing up there? But if it's up there, it means something, right? And it means something for eternity, not just a passing thing. So, we shouldn't be saying, oh, easy come, easy go, here today, gone tomorrow, right? Who cares? If it's so important that it can be presented to the Lamb in acknowledgement of who he is, we've got to think about it pretty hard. If you want another example, stick with Revelation 21. This is the New Jerusalem coming down from heaven, decked out with all of these things. The foundations of the walls of the city were adorned with every kind of jewel. And then it gives a long list of jewels. And at the very end, verse 21, and the 12 gates were 12 pearls, each of the gates made of a single pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass. And this is the city that's going to be there forever and ever and ever. So, wealth has eternal significance. And that means we've got to wrestle with the idea of finances and wealth until it makes sense to us. And we can work with it, and it can work with us. But of course, if you want to be a bad steward, then don't believe this idea. Another idea for you not to believe, if you want to be a bad steward, do not believe in being generous to the poor. because why would you give your money away? It doesn't make sense. The only problem is you'll have also to not believe this verse. Proverbs 19:17. Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed. Did you catch that? Lends to the Lord. Lends to the Lord. That means whoever that person is has just put God in his debt. You just put God in your debt when you lend to the poor. And how does God repay? Because I'm sure he repays. Luke 6:38. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. For with the measure you use, it'll be measured to you. But again, if you don't want to be a good steward, don't believe that. Another one. Do not believe in tithing. You'll have to work really hard not to believe this, by the way, but don't believe it. Now, if anybody doesn't know what tithing is, and know almost of you are believers and been here a long time, it's very simple. It's a 10% of your wealth. It's a very old concept. It goes all the way back to Abraham in Genesis. But the Bible also tells us what happens if we do not tithe. Malachi 3:6-9. Now this is God talking to the Israelites. For I, the Lord, do not change, therefore you, O children of Jacob, are not consumed. From the days of your fathers, you have turned aside from my statutes and have not kept them. Return to me and I will return to you, says the Lord of hosts. And now here's the question. How shall we return? Wait a minute. What should the answer be? Pray more. Fast more. Read the Bible more. In this case, what does he say? You are robbing me. And if you want to come back to me, bring your tithes and contributions. Now, what does God say happens when people, his people, believers, his people are more concerned with their own affairs, their own house, and not the house of the Lord? Haggai 1:6. Now therefore, says the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. You have sown much and harvested little. You eat but never have enough. You drink but never have your fill. You clothe yourselves but no one is warm. And he who earns wages does so to put them in a bag with holes in it. That's a pretty dismal picture, right? So I thought about this quite a bit because I was one of those people. Early in my working years, I did not tithe. And there was never enough money. I couldn't figure it out. But almost 40 years later, I think I have an idea. And I'm going to give you an example. This is not in the Bible, but this is a logical story, I think, a logical example. So what happens when you do not tithe? This is what I think happens. Let's say there are 5 people. Yeah. You see they have different levels of income. The first one has $1,000 and the last one has $800. They're all believers. The first 3 decide to tithe. So you see $100, $200, $90, and of course number 4 and 5 decide not to, and so they give $0. So which means the total pot of the tithe is now $390. So what do they contribute, each of them? Well, the first one, their $100 was worth 26% of the $390. The second, the $200 contribution was worth 51% of the $390, and the last is 23%. That's what they contributed. Then what happens? That money gets into God's hands. So the first three, their money you see up there. And then the last two, they put their money in purses with holes in it. And so that money fell into the hands of God. To keep it simple, I will use the same 10%. So the one who won 600 actually ended up giving $60, and the one who won 800 actually ended up giving $80, and now the pot of money is $530. Make sense so far? I know it's a lot for a Sunday morning, but hopefully the slides are clear. Now what happens to this? What does God do with this money? He gives it back, obviously. He doesn't keep it for himself. How does he give it back? I think he gives it back with the same measure that they used. So the first person gets 26%, $136. The next gets 51%, $272, and the next gets 23%, $122, and so the money is all used up. Adds up to $530 magically. Now, interestingly, each of them got 36% more back than what they gave. You can do the math. I assure you it's all 36%. Now, let me be clear. This is a formula that's not in the Bible. I'm not promising you a 36% return on your tithe. But I can tell you one thing. This idea of the 26 and the 31 and all of that is rooted here. Luke 6:38. Give and it will be given. How? Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. But of course, as a bad steward, you wouldn't believe that. Now, some of you may say, Ashok, you're really stretching this now. Okay, this is all Old Testament stuff. Tithing is nowhere in the New Testament. So, it doesn't apply to me. There are lots of examples in the Bible of generous giving in the New Testament. But I give it to you, yeah, it doesn't exactly say you should tithe in the New Testament. The only answer I can give you is, you know what, you can trust your covenant theories about the old and the new, and I will trust my real life experience. There was a time when I did not tithe, and there was a time when I started, and the two felt very different. Felt very different. Take it for what you will. Sorry, this is my mic on my chin. Okay, so let's wrap up those 4 points and move on. The clicker will cooperate. Oh, I forgot about this one, which is the blessing that is promised in Malachi 3:10 for those who tithe. The interesting thing is, this is the only verse in the Bible where you're allowed to test God. We are not allowed to test God because He is God. But in this, in tithing, He says, put me to the test and see if I will not open up the windows of heaven, pouring down for you a blessing until there is no more need. Again, read this carefully. It doesn't say He's going to pour down money on you, so you're going to be rolling in wealth. He doesn't say that. Until there is no more need. No more need. Okay? All right, so the three areas: don't believe that it has any eternal significance, which is wealth. Don't believe in being generous to the poor, and don't believe in tithing. And then you would be a bad steward of your finances, if that was your goal. Now, let's step back. Look at the big picture. I mean, not that big picture. Let's look at 4 key ideas that have practical application of this. Okay. Well, 3 maybe because of time. Money reveals what is inside of you. What do I mean by that? Some of you may recognize this name, Jean-Paul Getty. He passed away. Founded Getty Oil. In 1957, Fortune magazine named him the richest American ever. And in 1966, Guinness Book of World Records declared him to be the wealthiest man in the world. Now, he was known for his sayings about money. By the way, he's also known for his, I must tell you the story, he's also known for his miserliness. I believe in 1973, his grandson was kidnapped in Rome. And the kidnappers wanted $30 million of ransom. All over the papers. Guess what Getty did? He negotiated with them, got them down to $2.2 million. That's how miserly he was. And why $2.2 million? Because that was the maximum IRS tax deductible he could get. So the guy knew about money, okay? And here's what he had to say. If one morning you take all the wealth in the world and divide it up equally among every human being, by the end of the day, everyone will end up pretty much where they were the previous day. I don't know if it's true or not, interesting idea. Because money reveals what's inside of you. Now, everything I'm saying in this part of the sermon applies whether you have lots of money, little money, or no money. These principles apply in every situation. Money or the lack of money amplifies what's in you. If you have lots of money, it removes many barriers between what you want and what you don't want. Which may be why Jesus said this in Luke 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, in a practical sense, if you give me 12 months worth of your bank statement and your credit card statement, I can tell you something about who you are. Because I can see where your money is going. It's true of me as well. Everybody. It's just a thing. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where is your heart? Your views on money can reflect your relationship to God. Jesus made a stunning statement, Luke 6:24. You cannot serve both God and money. The word money is very old, comes from Aramaic. You see up there, then it moved to Greek, then it moved to Latin, then it moved to Middle English. And it's not just about money as money, right? It's about the seductive power and the false security that wealth promises, acting as a spiritual rival to God. So giving money its proper place in our lives can be one of the hardest things to do as believers, but it's a necessary thing. Now, you and I may find it hard to trust God with our money, but our money doesn't have that problem. It says right on the coin, in God we trust. John Wesley, who was one of the co-founders of the Methodist movement with his brother Charles Wesley, had this to say, and I heard this from a preacher in England many years ago. It stuck with me. The last part of a man to be saved is his pocketbook or wallet. I tell you this in all seriousness, my friends. If you've given your life to Christ, but in your heart you've not brought the area of money under his authority and his command, you have to rethink that part very carefully. Why? Because you are in danger of being on the wrong side of that verse we just read. You cannot serve both God and money. But here's what he's actually saying. Who do you want a relationship with? God or money? Now, why do you use the word relationship? Because the word stewardship, or the idea of stewardship, is actually grounded in relationship. Let's go back to Genesis 1:26. We've seen this verse before, but I'm going to highlight a different part of it. The first part. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that. So the so that, which is stewardship, is actually preceded by relationship. And if you know anything about God, you know that he is a relational being. And so that is a bedrock principle you can stake your life around. And you see that in the Bible, right? All the way from Eden again. When Adam sins and hides, what happens? The Lord comes calling, Adam, where are you? And all the way through the Bible, that's the story of God reaching out to us. And that relationship idea can be built on further. If you go to the next slide, God has given us key principles for each category. We just touched on one of them. And these principles work for anybody. You don't have to be a believer, you can be an atheist, I don't care. These principles work for everybody. But believers have a deeper foundation. What is it? 1 Corinthians 8:6. Yet for us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came and from whom we live, and there is but one Lord Jesus Christ, through whom all things came and through whom we live. Everything actually ties back to God. But before I finish, let me show you, these categories are not independent of each other. Let's take an example. Let's say you're a poor steward of your health. All you do is eat junk food morning, afternoon, evening, and night. What do you think it's going to do to your ability to work? Let's take friendships, another category, and then we'll link it to something else. Let's say friendships, yeah. So let's say you have a whole bunch of bad friendships. What do you think it's going to do to your family life? Or let's take family life. Let's say you have a terrible family life. What's that going to do with your ability to work? My friends, these are all interconnected, every one of them. Which is why being good stewards is important. This is why understanding what stewardship means is important, so that we can operate in these categories according to the principles that God has given us. And when we do that, it's going to draw us closer to God Himself into that relationship in which stewardship is grounded. Stewardship is not this vague idea floating around in the ether. It is fundamental to who we are as people, as human beings, as believers. So I'm going to close with this. Life is complicated, life is tough, it's beyond our control, it's messy, like a roller coaster. But God has given us two guardrails to keep us on track. One of them is the idea of stewardship, and the other is that when properly exercised, stewardship brings you into closer relationship with Him. And isn't He finally the object of our life, the object of our faith? So let's stay within these guardrails, my friends. And if we do so, one day you will hear the words, "Well done, well done, thou good and faithful servant."